Hello and welcome back to the Football Chat. Today we're going to be talking about the points deduction handed to Everton, the 10 points they have been deducted, and we'll be talking about the potential ramifications for the rest of the Premier League, including Chelsea and Manchester City, who both have rumoured points deduction. So, Harry, situation, there's been a lot of news on it. We've been speaking about this for months now. The first sort of stuff came out in March of this year, where it was given to an independent commission. Obviously, they were looking at it before then. So it's been a while coming. Did you expect a penalty this harsh, though?
I mean, 10 points is a lot. As you say, it's a situation that's been building over the recent months. Whether 10 points is harsh, I think it is a little bit. 10 points, that is right.
Apparently it's the sternest punishment in the history of the Premier League. Obviously, there's been many penalty points handed out when deducted before. But mainly for brawls and stuff.
Yeah, only the sixth time in top flight history. This is a very, very big thing.
Yeah, the 10 points drops them into the relegation zone. They're now sit 19th, and they're only ahead of Burnley on goal difference. So, yeah, it's a big shift from what was looking like a really positive season for Everton for them being in the relegation zone. Now they could still be all right. They're only 2 points off Luton in 17th, and they play Man United next weekend. So there's a very good chance they win that. But I do think it's still very harsh on Everton. So the alleged breaches took place in the 21-22 season. So that's, 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
Not a strong campaign either, so not great from them. But yeah, Everton, it's just been really poorly run, really, the club. They spent a load of money on players that were never going to be worth the same in resale. Yeah. If we look at, Cenk Tosun's a great example. I think they signed him for about, 30 million. Don't quote me on that, though. That's off the top of my head figure. And I think he left for free, or very, very little, in comparison in the summer just gone. So it's transfers like that. Davy Klaassen, another example, signed for around that 30 million fee, left for very little. It's just not a sustainable model, especially when they're not pushing up the league and getting any prize money. They're not getting into Europe. They're not going anywhere. They're spending money and not getting anywhere. So it's just not a sustainable and functional model. And it's led to them being in this situation where they've overspent beyond the profit and sustainability rules, and that's left them in a spot of bother. But yeah, so what does this mean for Everton? The sort of ramifications for Everton as a club? Well, they should still be fine from relegation, you would think, given the lack of quality from Burnley, Sheffield United, Luton and Bournemouth. You'd think they could still stay upright.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Burnley, that's embarrassing. A team has been deducted 10 points and you're still below them. I do feel, I think for Everton, obviously, really it's their own fault. But, I mean, maybe not 10 points, but, after 2 tough years for Everton in 21 and 22, this year they actually started pretty decently. Picked up a good few points, picked up some big wins. They've played some decent football at times, saying Sean Dyche is a manager. They've looked good. There's been a real positive attitude about Everton. They look like they may avoid being in a relegation scrap this year.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this 10 points has put them right back where they started.
Yeah, so basically over the period they lost 124.5 million, which exceeds the threshold of 105 million, which is permitted under those financial regulations. That was what the 10-point deduction is for. Now, already we're seeing the clubs that were relegated in 21-22, so the season in which Everton managed to stay up on that final day, knocking... Who went down? Was it Burnley, I think? That was the season when Burnley got relegated. Yeah, well, Norwich and Watford were already out of it. But Burnley stayed up. Burnley went down on the final day as Everton stayed up. So Burnley apparently looking to sue Everton for 30... I think it was Burnley, Leicester and Leeds. Because obviously last season as well, the same thing happened, where Everton stayed up on the final day. And so those 3 clubs are all looking at a lawsuit towards Everton. Whether anything materialises from that, whether that's just paper talk, remains to be seen. But you can understand their frustration, because if Everton were operating outside of the jurisdiction, outside of the rules, then it's completely understandable why they would feel hard done by, given the fact they were relegated rather than a team that were cheating.
Yeah, at the end, I don't like that. I really don't like that, especially from Burnley, because they're already promoted.
But if they can get 30 million out of it, they're going to get 30 million out of it, aren't they?
At the end of the day, yes, they spent over, but all this money they spent, did it work? Not really.
Everton probably would have stayed up, but they didn't spend that. If they didn't pay Iwobi.
I think it's just a bit petty, because at the end of the day, It's about the foot on the pitch. Leeds and Leicester got relegated because they weren't good enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't to do with what Everton spent while they stayed up. It's because they brought in Sean Dyche and they held the fort and picked up some decent points. I think that's a bit pathetic, really, from both those sides.
Yeah, well, 3 of them. Yeah, fair enough. Obviously, Everton released a statement basically, being shocked and disappointed by the Premier League run. Shocked? It started in March, mate. You're still surprised what happens in November. But then they go on to say that the Commission has imposed, or the club believes that the Commission has imposed a wholly disproportionate and unjust sporting sanction. The club's already communicated its decision to appeal the decision to the Premier League.
Yeah, that bit makes a bit more sense to me. I think, should they have been punished? Absolutely. They broke the rules. You can't do that. Did they deserve 10 points? That's harsh. I feel that's harsh.
Especially given that the penalty doesn't fall within the season of the... They didn't break the rules this season.
Yeah.
So obviously they couldn't do it. They can't punish retrospectively because then we've got to go back and sort it all out. That wouldn't work. We can't go back in time. But... is a penalty points this season very fair? Not really. Obviously, it means we've also got... there was other options. So that could have been a fine. It could have even been a transfer embargo, which, I don't think transfer embargoes for points deductions are fair because I think that's still...
could you do a bit
they've already spent the money, so it doesn't really matter. But, well, yeah, you could have something like that, but... It could have been a lower point deduction and a fine, for example, but
I think
there's no money at Everton anyway.
Yeah,
even to find them.
I think compared to other fines in the past, United got -1 in the 1990s for a brawl. Arsenal got -2 for that same brawl.
We've never seen anything like this for a sport We've never seen a sporting sanction like this for a FFP breach.
Yeah, I kind of what team was that a team fell into liquidation and they only got -6 or 7.
Yeah, I mean that's. I want to say it would have been mid 2000s, right?
Yeah, I can't remember who it was. It was They got -6 or -7.
Fulham?
Potentially.
Just before their owner came in.
Maybe.
His name I can't remember, but I know he's not. He's a very wealthy man. But yeah. So it's going to be an interesting situation for Everton. It's going to be interesting to see whether the points get overturned. But a good point I heard made while in the barbershop, actually, sat in the barbers. Everton fan near me cutting someone else's hair, and I overheard him talking about it, and they were talking about it, all the barbers, and they were saying how actually this does have a huge impact on Everton, not in terms of the league because they could still stay up by quite some distance, but actually on the potential takeover. So it was believed that 777, I think it is, are coming in to take over the club, which is now in jeopardy because obviously Everton no longer are in a safe position in the Premier League. So why would they buy an asset which could be relegated and is currently ongoing some huge allegations of financial misconduct?
Yeah.
Like that, it's a very risky purchase then. Because if the Premier League dig deeper and found more stuff, then that could be very damaging. Everton may now well be relegated. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the takeover still goes through. But I think it's going to be delayed no matter what. Because they're going to want to wait until Everton are at least out of the relegation zone and probably a little bit safe. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes of that. But I think the biggest thing to take away from this Everton situation is that no club in the Premier League is safe. If Everton, a club that have been going since, I believe, 1888, I want to say they've been going since.
One of the 6 founders.
Can have it. Yeah, exactly. Then it's interesting to see, if it can happen to them, should it can happen to anyone?
Yeah.
And if you look at the other big clubs across the world right now that it's happening to, Everton, Barcelona, Inter Milan, Lyon, Hertha Berlin, all experiencing financial difficulties. There is a huge problem at the moment with clubs and their finances.
Yeah. It does feel like a bit of a problem because, these are teams that have, as we said, Everton, have been in the Premier League forever. And these other big European teams that are fighting for the best competitions in the world are struggling financially.
Yeah, and just on that, you mentioned earlier about the points deduction. Portsmouth got a 9-point deduction for going into administration in 2009-10, which pretty much relegated them.
Yeah.
No, that put them down at that point. There was no hope for them.
A team that went into administration got a weaker penalty than a team that just lost more, spent more than they should have.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see whether 777 come in. It's going to be interesting to see what the impact is on Everton. But I think the bigger question here is what ramifications and what issues does this raise for the Premier League? because, as we say, if it can happen to anyone, should it happen to any other Premier League club? And if they're awarding 10 points for a breach of £20 million one time, then what do they award to other clubs? So Manchester City, obviously, the biggest question is around them. Last summer, it was reported, or a couple of years ago, it's within the last year, I think, it was reported that they had 115 alleged breaches of financial fair play regulations. UEFA tried to go at them for them. They were unsuccessful because Man City basically found every lawyer this side of the Atlantic, and they've managed to deflect all those allegations. But the Premier League's still investigating, still ongoing with Manchester City. Do we see anything coming of that, given that they've just penalised Everton?
Saying that the best team in the world a year ago, that was breaking news, 115 breaches, and then it's gone very quiet. No one's talked about it since. It's just all a bit weird, isn't it? It is all, and it always is, and it's one of those. We'll just do the Premier League and we'll go after them. No, because it would completely, it put the Premier League under a lot of scrutiny and pressure. Because their only option would be to kick City out of the Football League, or kick City out of the Premier League, and that would cause huge uproar.
Yeah, it's interesting. Only 20 million over the budget as well. It's a very harsh penalty for being just 20 million on that. Obviously, that comes as well when FFP has changed in recent years. It came down from the sort of figure that Everton spent to what we're at now. So it's interesting to see that obviously that the 10 points are awarded. It's going to be interesting to see whether that has an impact on other clubs, whether Man City get anything. I mean, the thing is, if Man City are awarded the same penalty per breach, then they'd be looking at minus 1,150 points, which would put them currently bottom of the league on minus 1,122.
Let's see how good Pep Guardiola is.
Yeah, so that would be quite the great escape if they managed to pull that one off. But I can't see how Everton can be penalised as harshly and City aren't.
Yeah. But City won't, because they're Manchester City. They'll find a way around it, and if they don't, I'm sure they can give the Premier League a bit of money.
They've been doing it for long enough. They've been finding ways around it, so I'm sure they can find one more. But it's a very severe punishment. Whether City get the same will be interesting. Obviously, Chelsea also involved in this. Chelsea this week, it came out that Roman Abramovich had spent, during his time as owner, had given a lot of money to other clubs, and a lot of fraud in that regard, a lot of laundering to clubs like Swindon, I believe one of the clubs mentioned. Obviously, Vitesse are the big one. Vitesse Arnhem, never an official affiliation with Chelsea yet over the relationship between the two clubs. I believe something like 100 million was pumped from Chelsea into Vitesse. And that obviously has a huge impact there. And obviously Chelsea and Vitesse had that long-standing relationship of loanees. So, or maybe the other way around. I think maybe they're pumping more money into Chelsea by funneling it through Vitesse or something like that. But either way, it's an interesting story whether Chelsea get penalised for that. This Premier League are also still trying to penalise Chelsea for their spending of the last 4 transfer windows, with a lot of money spent finding that loophole in terms of amortisation. They're still trying to find a way to penalise Chelsea for that. So the Premier League, still a lot of investigating to do. Do you think the reason for this harsh... Why do you think this reason for the harsh penalty is? Because I think I've got a reason. Why do you think they've awarded such a severe punishment?
I mean, the only thing I think of is it's something you don't do accidentally. You know, that the financial advisors of Everton didn't wake up one day and go, hang about.
We've accidentally overspent by 20 million there.
We've just breached a load of rules that we should have followed.
Equally, with the way the clubs are at the moment, I wouldn't be shocked.
But Everton knew they did it. And that is the only way I can see why the Premier League are, you know what you've done, you've broken the law. You know, at the end of the day, they've punished them. But the problem is they have boxed themselves in, because with the City and Chelsea thing, if they're going to penalise Everton, I think, especially in the hands of City, because Chelsea, I mean, half of that was under a different owner. They still come after Chelsea.
And the other half was completely legal. They're just annoyed by it because they found a loophole.
They still come after Chelsea for Abramovich, and it's bizarre.
Which I don't get. I think the only way you can punish Chelsea for that is retrospectively. If you were going to take titles and stuff, which would still feel unfair at that point.
You start doing that, it's a complete uproar. City, if you kick them out of the Football League, uproar. If you take their titles, uproar. The Premier League won't want to do anything that puts them in a bad position. Whereas
I don't think there's any uproar if City get kicked out of the league.
Yeah, good point. There are no City fans to get angry at it.
Well, I think they'd have to. You could shout at a cloud all you want, but quite frankly, they've broken the rules over a lengthy period of time. I don't think there's any conversations even been had there. So Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens there.
The one thing I don't think should ever happen is stripping of titles, because
Yeah.
you know, no matter what happened off the pitch, Pep Guardiola and that Man City team have still played incredible football, and they deserve everything they've won. Same with Chelsea. You always deserve to win the title that you win, which is why I think you can never take a trophy off a team for things that happened off the field.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can retrospectively take away titles. I think. If the only time I can think of it happening in the last 2 decades on a big scale, large scale, was obviously the Calcio Pioli scandal, where Juventus were stripped of titles in that period. But no, I mean, while they were awarded to clubs like Napoli and Inter, and they'll add up to the official tallies, I still think for a lot of people, Juve won those titles.
Yeah.
So while they were cheating, it had very little impact knocking them down the leagues. Now, the only reason that it would have a bigger impact for City is because if they were to be expelled from the Premier League, there is no incentive for the EFL to take them on.
No.
And even if they were, they could say you've got to come to League Two or something like that. Yeah. So there's no incentive there. Meaning they could just be knocked down to the National League, meaning we'd get another National League side in the Football League next season, or an extra one, or
I think it pushes it, doesn't it?
If either that happens, or they just Man City, one of the clubs that get relegated from the Premier League, and then it just works out that the same amount one less team goes down,
you finish
rather than one more team comes up.
You lucky sods.
It'll be League Two, so it'll be whoever finishes 22nd.
Yeah.
No, 23rd. Sorry, would still stay up.
Wow.
Crawley might be all right at this rate.
Yeah.
They're actually doing all right, to be fair. But it's going to be interesting. As I was saying before, with regards to why they've been so severe, personally, I think it does make sense, given the fact there's been a lot of talk, especially from the government, of an independent regulator coming into the Premier League and making sure that everything is ticking along nicely. Yeah. I think they've gone for this harsh penalty or punishment to show that they're not pushovers, that they will enforce the rules strongly to ensure there's not cheating. So I think in that regard it makes sense, and the timing of it seems a little, a little suspicious. A lot of talk over the last year about an independent regulator coming in, and suddenly the Premier League are taking action. Well, they've not taken action against Manchester City over the last decade, and Chelsea over the last 2 decades. You could say
so. That punishment for City's got to come soon. They've punished Everton now. That punishment for City has to come soon.
Yeah, if not, there's going to be a lot.
They'll go quiet again, and they'll get slipped a few more banknotes, and everyone forget about it. But they've got to come out swinging if they're going to do the 7.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what occurs over the next few months, and whether we see more clubs hit with similar penalties. Because I'm sure if the Premier League I'm sure Everton will be trying to find other clubs that have done anything and showing them to the league, and then it'll be very fascinating. But at this rate, we could see all 3 promoted sides survive if enough teams get booted out of the top flight. But yeah, very, very interesting stuff. Please do give your thoughts in the comments below, because there's a lot of different angles, a lot of different opinions on this topic, and I'm love to hear from people at home what you guys think. I'm sure there's going to be people much more knowledgeable than us out there that have read a load more media, consumed a lot more media, and have a lot more knowledge of what the financial regulations of the Premier League are. We're simply giving opinions here. But yeah, so if you've got more information, got more knowledge or an opinion, make sure to get it in the comments. What are you going to say?
All those very passionate Everton fans.
If there's loads of passionate Everton fans, lovely.
I spoke to 2 and they're all very angry.
And one of the barbers is also furious. Yeah. That man is furious about everything, so that's quite understandable. But yeah, shout out Mikey if you're watching. That's everything for today, though. Of course, if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe. We're still trying to hit 2,000 this year, which I know very difficult now as we're fast approaching December and still need another 120. But if we could do that, that would be fantastic. Of course, if you are also a fan of the women's game, then check out our brand new channel, the Women's Football Chat. You can find it in the channel section of our page. We talk about all the WSL and all the other action in the women's league. So yeah, or if you just want to support us, then check that out. But that's everything from us today. Thank you very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.